State Department delays China sanctions after balloon drama. Deter preemptive strike. U.S. lawmaker introduces bill to bolster air bases over Taiwan issue. New Zealand and Australia respond after Taiwan Foreign Minister calls for pushback against Beijing's influence. Is China about to lose its title of world's factory floor?
In a disturbing disclosure, the Chinese spy balloon incident in the US is the reason that prevents Washington from sanctioning Beijing. Reuters on May 10th said that it viewed an internal State Department message, which showed that senior US officials decided to delay human rights-related sanctions against China. This included those aiming at Chinese officials for mistreating Uyghurs, and export licensing rules for telecom equipment maker Huawei, a known facilitator of its human rights abuses. In an email dated February 6th, Rick Waters, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for China and Taiwan, told staff that Secretary of State Antony Blinken wanted to leave the measures aside to focus on symmetric and calibrated response. And while the email promised that the sanctions should be reviewed in the coming weeks, sources said that many hadn't been restored yet. They said such deferral has worn down the spirits of those at China House. Reuters noted that the Biden administration has wanted to prevent current ties with China under the Communist Party from further straining. They have already shrunk to a level experts said was the worst since 1979. While ex-diplomats and bipartisan lawmakers say the US needs to talk to Beijing to prevent confusion and manage crises, the sources said they were going down the old trail, whereby Beijing could pressure concessions from Washington for unproductive dialogues. These sources have sought to conceal their identity over fear of reprisals. A senior State Department official told Reuters that their strategy needed to be in the proper order to make sure they have the best effect, and that their message is understood and delivered exactly as they want it. One thing is clear. The unexpected Chinese spy balloon was the very reason Blinken called off his planned trip to Beijing. But instead of China, it was also Washington that repeatedly sought to resume the high-profile engagement, and was constantly turned down by Beijing. In April, the Financial Times reported that China rejected a request for Blinken's visit, as it was worried about an FBI release about the spy balloon. The Financial Times shared, 4 people familiar with the negotiations said China had told the US it was not prepared to reschedule a trip that Blinken canceled in February, while it remains unclear what the administration of President Joe Biden will do with the report. U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, Republican, Florida, on May 11th, introduced a bill designed to strengthen American air bases in the Indo-Pacific region to better respond to mainland Chinese aggression against Taiwan. According to RFA, the legislation, titled the Deterring Chinese Preemptive Strikes Act, directs the U.S. Department of Defense to harden U.S. facilities in the Indo-Pacific to help further deter a preemptive strike against U.S. forces and assets in the region by China ahead of an invasion of Taiwan. A statement by Rubio's office said that war games conducted by the Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies revealed that Beijing's strategy, if it were to mount such an invasion, would be to launch missile attacks against American bases in the area. The proposed legislation calls for a survey of the region's aviation resources to see if any are lacking in enhancements that would mitigate damage to aircraft in the event of a missile, aerial drone, or other form of attack by the People's Republic of China. After the survey is finished, the Secretary of Defense will present the findings to the relevant congressional committees, who will subsequently implement the improvement plans. A representative from Rubio's office told RFA's Mandarin service, Senator Rubio has been clear on the importance of defending Taiwan. In March, Rubio and his colleagues introduced the Taiwan Protection and National Resilience Act, a bill that seeks to create a plan for dealing with a potential invasion. In February, CIA Director William Burns said that Chinese President Xi Jinping wants to be able to invade Taiwan within the next 4 years.
New Zealand and Australia took action after Taiwan Foreign Minister Joseph Wu urged New Zealand to invest more in the Pacific to counter Beijing's influence. According to Taiwan News, in an interview with TVNZ on May 7th, Wu was asked if Taiwan wanted to see New Zealand do more to combat China's influence in the Pacific. Wu answered emphatically, "I hope New Zealand can make more investments in the Pacific countries." Wu added, if like-minded countries like New Zealand, Australia, and the US increase their investment in the Pacific, they can help Pacific Island countries reduce their dependence on China. I think the United States and Australia have been doing all that. They have been increasing their investment in the Pacific rapidly, and I certainly hope New Zealand can also consider the approach. In the interview, Wu also talked about the risks that New Zealand had to bear regarding trade relations with China. He said, New Zealand's trade with China is perfectly harmless, but we need to be aware that someday China might use this as a weapon against New Zealand to change your national course. On May 10th, 3 days after Wu's sharings, the Australian government announced it would set aside $1.35 billion for the Pacific Ocean to expand economic and security ties. On the same day, a New Zealand Foreign Ministry spokesperson told Taiwan News that New Zealand had invested more in the Pacific. The spokesperson said, Aotearoa, New Zealand has been continuously lifting its engagement in our region by deepening our relationships with Pacific countries, increasing our development assistance in the region, and coordinating efforts with other donors. China has far surpassed every country in global manufacturing after attracting a host of multinationals. However, the COVID blockades and calls to separate the Western economy from China are causing companies to rethink. The movement of Escape from China was formed. Manufacturing in China no longer has many advantages when land, manpower, logistics, custom duties, and trade tariffs are no longer competitive. In addition, the trade war, technology transfer, and intellectual property theft also make foreign businesses tend to bring the supply chain back home. Meanwhile, Chinese companies build production plants in countries where many consumers reside. Under President Xi Jinping, China has become even more authoritarian. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP's coercive policies violate WTO rules and adversely affect the business environment. In addition, the CCP's investigations of companies and sky-high worker wages have forced companies to leave China. Governments worldwide are concerned about their dependence on supply chain disruptions from China. Companies need more transparency in CCP reporting figures to conduct due diligence on their local partners' quarterly and annual financial statements. Besides, the country is also losing the advantage of cheap labor due to AI and automation. Due to the coercive policies of the CCP and U.S. trade tariffs, companies such as Apple, Whirlpool, and Stanley Black & Decker have abandoned sales plans or announced their decision to move production to the U.S. Companies like HP, Dell, Microsoft, and Amazon are moving their assets out of China. Some companies that have relocated to neighboring countries are Harley-Davidson, Panasonic, Samsung, and Foxconn. Western companies are desperately looking for a backup plan for China as the world's factory floor, and India is a good candidate. China finally has a worthy rival. According to the United Nations, only India has a labor force and domestic market compared to the mainland. India has also made great efforts to make the business environment more friendly and has gradually overcome some barriers doing business. In 2014, India announced its Made in India strategy to boost manufacturing. In addition, the country is also digitalizing many government services and accelerating the construction of railways, airports, and container ports. According to Economic Times, India's rise in the World Bank's ease of doing business rankings proves that the country is taking integration with other countries seriously. Evidence of India's change is indicated in the vast industrial estates of Sriperamadur in Tamil Nadu, which has attracted a wide range of multinational corporations looking for an alternative to China to produce goods from solar panels to wind turbines to toys and shoes. India's exports in the electronics sector have tripled since 2018 to $23 billion. In addition, Counterpoint Technology market research shows India's global smartphone production is expected to reach 19% this year. JP Morgan also estimates that a quarter of all Apple iPhones will be manufactured in India by 2025. Indian officials hope Apple's presence will spur other companies to invest in the Indian market. Commerce and Industrial Minister Piyush Goyal said, "Very often you have anchor companies who set the trend. We believe that this will send a strong signal to other companies in Europe, America, and Japan." Foxconn is set to expand iPhone production at its current factory near the Indian city of Chennai. It aims to increase iPhone production to about 20 million units annually by 2024 and nearly triple its workforce to 100,000. Finland's Sailcomp CEO Saikumar Gendham said India introduced tax and customs relief measures on exports in 2015 and revised it again in 2021 to activate the entire electronics industry. Since 2014, the number of Indian workers in Salcomp have increased sixfold and is expected to reach 25,000 in the next 2 years. Mr. Jules Shi is the director of trade promotion agency Deter in Chennai. He said India tried to improve their business environment but must overcome many aspects. For example, foreign companies still take a long time with administrative procedures related to land, building factories, and applying for visas for engineers and managers. But it seems that the trend is moving the world's factory floor from China to India and is gradually becoming a reality. According to central bank data, foreign direct investment in India averaged $42 billion annually between 2020 and 2022, doubling in less than a decade.